Let me tell you about the last camping trip I ever took with my best friend, Mark. It was supposed to be an adventure, a chance for us to escape the stress of our everyday lives and reconnect with nature. But what started as a simple hike through the woods quickly turned into a nightmare neither of us could have imagined. Mark and I have been friends since childhood, bonded by a shared love of the outdoors and a thirst for adventure. So when he suggested we spend a weekend camping in the remote wilderness of Lost Hollow, I jumped at the chance. Little did I know that our decision would lead us down a path of darkness and despair. We arrived at Lost Hollow on a crisp autumn morning, the air alive with the scent of fallen leaves and pine. The forest stretched out before us like a vast sea of green, with towering trees and tangled underbrush as far as the eye could see. Mark led the way, his backpack slung over his shoulder and a grin on his face as he forged ahead into the unknown. As we hiked deeper into the woods, the trail grew fainter, and the forest seemed to close in around us like a suffocating embrace. But Mark was undeterred, his confidence unwavering as he pushed onward, determined to find the perfect spot to set up camp. Hours passed, and the sun began to sink below the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest floor. We stumbled upon a small clearing nestled between two towering oaks, and Mark declared it the perfect place to pitch our tent for the night. We worked quickly, setting up camp as the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky. But as darkness fell and the woods fell silent, a sense of unease settled over us like a heavy blanket. I could feel eyes watching us from the shadows, and the hair on the back of my neck stood on end as a chill wind whispered through the trees. Mark brushed off my concerns, insisting that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But as the night wore on and the forest grew quieter still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. That's when we heard it, a low, guttural growl echoing through the darkness, sending shivers down my spine. Mark tensed beside me, his hand instinctively reaching for the hunting knife he kept strapped to his belt. We scanned the trees, searching for any sign of movement, but the forest remained still as dead. And then, without warning, the trees erupted into a cacophony of sound. Branches snapping, leaves rustling, and something unseen crashing through the underbrush with terrifying speed. Panic set in as we realized we were not alone in the woods. Whatever lurked in the darkness was closing in on us, its presence palpable in the air like a thick fog. With trembling hands, Mark fumbled for his flashlight, casting its feeble beam into the blackness beyond. And there, illuminated in the dim light, was a sight that would haunt me for the rest of my days. A creature stood before us, its form twisted and grotesque, with eyes that burned like hot coals in the darkness. Its skin was mottled and rotting, hanging loosely from its skeletal frame like tattered rags. And as it bared its jagged teeth in a silent snarl, I knew we were facing something not of this world. We ran then, heedless of the thorns tearing at our skin, and the roots tripping us up at every turn. But no matter how fast we ran, the creature was always one step behind, its unearthly growls echoing through the night like a death knell. We stumbled upon a clearing, and I saw Mark's face go white as a sheet as he pointed towards something in the distance. There, blooming in the darkness, was a dilapidated cabin, a relic of a time long forgotten, its windows shattered and its walls stained with decay. Without a word, we made a mad dash for the safety of the cabin, praying that its rotting timbers would hold against whatever horror pursued us. We slammed the door shut behind us, barricading it with whatever furniture we could find as the creature's enraged howls echoed through the night. And there, huddled together in the darkness, we waited for dawn to break, knowing that our lives would never be the same again. The sun rose the next morning, casting its warm light across the forest floor and driving the darkness back into the shadows. But as we emerged from the safety of the cabin, we knew that Lost Hollow held secrets far darker than we could have ever imagined. We packed up our belongings in silence, our minds still reeling from the horrors of the night before. As we made our way back to civilization, I couldn't shake the feeling that something lingered in the depths of the forest, something ancient and malevolent, waiting to ensnare its next unsuspecting victims in its web of darkness. That was the last camping trip I ever took with Mark, and though we never spoke of what happened in Lost Hollow again, the memory of that fateful night will haunt me until the end of my days. The haunting of Ravenwood with my sister. The memory of that camping trip still sends shivers down my spine, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurk beyond the edge of our reality. It was supposed to be a simple weekend getaway with my sister, Jenna, a chance for us to escape the chaos of city life and reconnect with nature. But what awaited us in the depths of Ravenwood Forest was far more terrifying than we could have ever imagined. Jenna and I had always been close and inseparable since childhood. So when she suggested we spend a weekend camping in the remote wilderness of Ravenwood, I jumped at the chance. Little did I know that our decision would lead us down a path of darkness and despair. We arrived at the edge of Ravenwood on a crisp autumn afternoon, the trees ablaze with fiery hues of red and gold. The forest loomed before us like a living entity, its ancient trees whispering secrets too terrible to comprehend. But Jenna was undeterred, her sense of adventure outweighing any reservations I may have had. As we hiked deeper into the woods, the air grew heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. The trail wound its way through the heart of the forest, twisting and turning like a serpent as it led us deeper into the unknown. But Jenna led the way, her enthusiasm infectious as she forged ahead, her laughter echoing through the trees. Night fell quickly, the darkness swallowing us whole as we set up camp in a small clearing nestled between two towering pines. The crackling campfire cast flickering shadows on the forest floor, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that there was something lurking in the darkness just beyond the reach of the fire's light. Jenna brushed off my concerns, insisting that it was just my imagination running wild. But as the night wore on and the forest grew quiet, a sense of unease settled over us like a thick fog. I could feel eyes watching us from the shadows, their gaze cold and malevolent. That's when we heard it, the sound of footsteps crunching on the forest floor, coming closer and closer with each passing moment. Jenna tensed beside me, her hand reaching for the flashlight we kept by our side. We scanned the darkness, searching for any sign of movement, but the forest remained eerily still. And then, without warning, the darkness erupted into chaos, a cacophony of screams and howls that pierced the night like a dagger. Jenna screamed beside me, her voice lost in the chaos as something unseen crashed through the underbrush with terrifying speed. I grabbed Jenna's hand, pulling her close as we ran blindly through the forest, our hearts pounding in our chests. But no matter how fast we ran, the darkness seemed to swallow us whole, its tendrils reaching out to drag us down into its depths. We stumbled upon a clearing, and I saw Jenna's face go white as a sheet as she pointed towards something in the distance. There, looming in the darkness, was a dilapidated cabin, a relic of a time long forgotten, its windows shattered and its walls stained with decay. Without a word, we made a mad dash for the safety of the cabin, praying that its rotting timbers would hold against whatever horror pursued us. We slammed the door shut behind us, barricading it with whatever furniture we could find as the creatures' enraged howls echoed through the night. And there, huddled together in the darkness, we waited for dawn to break, knowing that our lives would never be the same again. The sun rose the next morning, casting its warm light across the forest floor and driving the darkness back into the shadows. But as we emerged from the safety of the cabin, we knew that Ravenwood held secrets far darker than we could have ever imagined. We packed up our belongings in silence, our minds still reeling from the horrors of the night before. And as we made our way back to civilization, I couldn't shake the feeling that something lingered in the depths of the forest, something ancient and malevolent, waiting to ensnare its next unsuspecting victims in its web of darkness. That was the last camping trip I ever took with Jenna, and though we never spoke of what happened in Ravenwood again, the memory of that fateful night will haunt me until the end of my days. The crackling flames of our campfire danced and flickered against the backdrop of the darkened forest, casting eerie shadows that seemed to reach out and ensnare us in their grasp. Around me, the night air was thick with tension, as if the very woods themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something sinister to unfold. We were a group of friends seeking adventure in the wilderness, but little did we know that our camping trip would soon turn into a nightmare beyond our wildest imaginations. As we sat huddled together, the warmth of the fire offering some semblance of comfort, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over me like a heavy cloak. It was as if the forest itself was alive with an unseen malevolence, watching our every move with a predatory gaze. And then, from the depths of the woods, came a sound that chilled me to the bone. A low, guttural growl that echoed through the night like a warning from some ancient guardian of the forest. My heart leaped into my throat as I scanned the darkness, searching for the source of the sound, but all I could see were the twisted branches of the trees swaying in the gentle breeze. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my voice barely audible above the crackling of the fire. My friends exchanged nervous glances, their faces pale in the flickering light. "It's probably just an animal," one of them muttered, but even he couldn't hide the fear in his voice. But deep down I knew that whatever lurked in the shadows of the forest was no ordinary creature. There was something primal and malevolent about it, something that filled me with a sense of dread unlike anything I had ever experienced before. As the night wore on, the forest seemed to come alive with strange noises and eerie whispers, as if the very trees themselves were speaking to us in a language we couldn't understand. I could feel the weight of their gaze upon me, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, beckoning me deeper into the darkness. And then, without warning, the fire flickered and died, leaving us shrouded in darkness. Panic surged through me like a tidal wave as I fumbled for my flashlight, the beam cutting through the night like a beacon of hope. But as the light pierced the darkness, my worst fears were realized. For there, standing at the edge of the clearing, was a creature unlike anything I had ever seen, a hulking figure with glowing eyes that seemed to burn with an otherworldly light. I could hear my friends screaming in terror as the creature advanced towards us, its footsteps echoing through the night like the tolling of the death knell. With every step it took, the forest seemed to grow darker, as if the very essence of life was being drained from the world around us. And then, just when all hope seemed lost, a voice broke through the chaos, a voice that was both familiar and comforting, like a lifeline in the midst of a raging storm. "Stay back," it cried, and I turned to see a figure emerging from the darkness, wielding a makeshift weapon fashioned from a fallen branch. It was our guide, a grizzled old woodsman who had led us into the forest days earlier. With a fierce determination in his eyes, the woodsman faced down the creature, his weapon raised high. "You don't belong here," he growled, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "This is our territory. We won't let you harm us." For a moment, the creature hesitated as if weighing its options. And then, with a snarl of frustration, it turned and vanished into the depths of the forest, leaving us shaken but alive. As the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, we emerged from the darkness of the woods, our hearts still pounding in our chests. It was a night that none of us would ever forget, a night filled with terror and danger beyond our wildest imaginations. But as we made our way back to civilization, I couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and reverence for the untamed wilderness that had nearly claimed our lives. For in the heart of the forest, amidst the darkness and the danger, there is a beauty that is both terrifying and sublime, a beauty that will forever haunt my dreams and stir my soul with echoes of the wild. The tires of our old station wagon hummed against the asphalt as we wound our way through the winding mountain roads, the distant peaks looming ominously against the night sky. It was supposed to be a simple road trip, a chance to escape the hustle and bustle of city life and reconnect with nature. But as we ventured deeper into the wilderness, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. We had been driving for hours, the road stretching out endlessly before us, when we spotted it. A weather-beaten sign half hidden by overgrown foliage, its faded letters barely legible in the dim light of the headlights. Campground ahead, it read, but there was something about the sign that sent a shiver down my spine, a sense of foreboding that I couldn't quite shake. Ignoring my unease, we pressed on, the headlights cutting through the darkness as we followed the narrow dirt road deeper into the forest. The trees seemed to close in around us, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, and I felt a creeping sense of claustrophobia closing in on me. And then, just when I thought we couldn't go any further, we came upon it. A clearing in the forest, where a dilapidated cabin stood silent, and still, its windows boarded up, and its roof sagging with age. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end as we pulled up to the cabin, the sense of unease growing stronger with each passing moment. But my friends were undeterred, their excitement palpable as they clambered out of the car and began unloading our camping gear. Reluctantly, I followed suit, my eyes never straying far from the looming silhouette of the cabin. There was something about it that felt wrong, as if it were watching us with malevolent intent. As night fell and the darkness closed in around us, we gathered around the campfire, the flames casting eerie shadows against the walls of the cabin. Despite my growing sense of unease, I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination running wild, that there was nothing to fear in this remote corner of the wilderness. But then, as we sat huddled together, the fire crackling softly in the darkness, we heard it, a sound that sent a chill down my spine. A soft, mournful wail echoing through the night like a ghostly lament. My heart hammered in my chest as I looked around at my friends, their faces pale and drawn in the flickering light of the fire. What was that? One of them whispered, her voice trembling with fear. But before anyone could answer, the cabin door creaked open with a sound like the groan of a dying beast, and a figure emerged from the darkness, a figure clad in tattered rags and moving with a slow, deliberate gait. I could feel the blood draining from my face as I watched the figure approach, his eyes fixed on us with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Who are you?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. But the figure said nothing, only continued to advance towards us, its movements jerky and unnatural. And then, just when I thought I couldn't bear the tension any longer, it stopped, its gaze fixed on the cabin behind us. With a sudden sense of dread, I turned to follow its gaze, and what I saw made my blood run cold. For there, standing in the doorway of the cabin, was another figure, a figure that was unmistakably human, yet somehow twisted and distorted, as if it had been warped by some unseen force. I could hear my friends screaming in terror as the figure lurched towards us, its outstretched hand reaching out as if to claim us for its own. With a surge of adrenaline, I turned and ran, sounds of chaos and confusion echoing in my ears, as I fled into the darkness of the forest. For hours I stumbled through the woods, my heart pounding in my chest as I struggled to put as much distance between myself and that cursed cabin as possible. When I finally emerged onto the road, the first light of dawn creeping over the horizon, I knew that I had escaped something truly evil. But as I drove away from that accursed place, the memory of what I had seen haunted my dreams, a reminder that there are some horrors that lurk in the darkness, waiting to ensnare unsuspecting travelers in their deadly embrace. And though I may never fully understand what happened that night, one thing is certain: I will never venture into the wilderness again without heeding the warning signs that lie hidden in its depths.